The outer layer of the ovary is ciliated epithelium, and this is called the germinal layer, because ovulation ejects what we would call a secondary oocyte onto the surface. The cilia carry it to the fimbria, and then the fimbria sweep it into the infundibulum, and that's how it moves along. Interesting thing to note, nicotine immobilizes cilia. And this is why women having fertility issues are told, if you're a smoker, it's time to stop. Because forget about immobilizing the cilia that line your respiratory tract. It could actually be influencing your fertility issues over here. So there is a tunica albuginea. It's deep to the germinal layer. But here is the story of our ovarian cycle. Our primordial follicles, they're all located within what we would call the cortex. Thanks to the influence of FSH, 20 of them are going to wake up and become primary follicles. They're going to race towards completing meiosis 1. Whoever makes it to meiosis 1 becomes the larger looking secondary follicle. The secondary follicle secretes the estrogen, which signals the hypothalamus to tell the anterior pituitary, stop the FSH and start the luteinizing hormone. And the inhibin causes the other 19 to degenerate. We call that atresia, and this is our atresic follicle. Our secondary follicle now responds to the luteinizing hormone, which, number one, makes it turn into a Graafian or a fascicular follicle, and the Graafian fascicular follicle is where ovulation comes from. They try to make it look like, yeah, it's not pleasant because we're breaking through the surface, so this is supposed to represent some degree of bleeding. This is our secondary oocyte. When does an oocyte become an ova? When it gets fertilized. And the oocyte is covered by what we call the corona radiata. Fertilization requires basically an army of sperm. It only takes one to get through. So when we hear reference to, well, you know why you guys aren't getting pregnant, it's because he's got a very low sperm count. And then you go back to, but doesn't it only take one? Well, we've got to dissolve our way through the corona radiata. So sperm are descending on it, releasing their enzymes and spending it. It's eventually someone leaves enough of a break that one sperm finally makes it through the break, and that's the sperm that contributes its half nucleus. But in the meantime, the corpus luteum now, or the Graafian follicle now becomes corpus luteum, which stands for yellow body. It's the corpus luteum that secretes extremely high levels of estrogen and progesterone, and that will now begin the proliferative phase of the uterine cycle. That's where the stratum functionalis starts to develop. If pregnancy doesn't occur within 14 days, meaning we don't have a blastula secreting human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG, hypothalamus goes, I guess we missed this month, shuts down the production of luteinizing hormone, which shuts down the corpus luteum, and it becomes the white body, the corpus albicans. Without the estrogen, the stratum functionalis again breaks down, and that's going to become the menstrual flow, and then you get like 4 days break, and then it starts all over again on the other ovary. If we were to look at the surface of a healthy 40-year-old ovary, it would be covered with little tiny white scars. And it could become part of a self-limiting situation that there just isn't enough surface area to break through. And that's everything on the reproductive system.